What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, joined by Dylan. We're here to preview the Houston Texans for the 2019 NFL season. The AFC South champs from a season ago. They made the playoffs. They met expectations. After kind of a struggle early on in the season, Deshaun Watson, J.J. Watt, they kind of took hold of the team and they were able to find themselves in the playoffs. Now, disappointing result in the playoffs. They lost to their rival, the Indianapolis Colts, and Andrew Luck in Wild Card Weekend. But there are some reasons to believe in this team. Of course, Deshaun Watson's one of the bright young stars in the NFL at any position. Of course, I brought up J.J. Watt. He kind of had a bounce-back dominant season with 16 sacks, one of the best defensive players in the league. There are some question marks with Jadeveon Clowney, some turnover along the secondary and then the offensive line. DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the game. Dylan, what are your thoughts on the Houston Texans in 2019? I know it's a division that's absolutely loaded, so the Texans are going to have a tough one.
Yeah, this is a very difficult team to analyze. Earlier in the year, or a couple weeks ago, we talked about this being one of the most overrated teams in football. So that gives you a little bit of any judgment going into this team preview. That's kind of how I feel about them. I like what they bring on paper. They have a lot of great talent. Deshaun Watson, as you brought up, one of the young stars of the future. Of course, I don't really like their running game. I think Lamar Miller is a okay running back, but doesn't bring anything great to the table. DeAndre Hopkins, first or second best receiver in the entire NFL. He's so dynamic. My questions are with the receiver depth afterwards. Will Fuller, when he's 100% healthy, is an absolute threat and absolutely helps this team out in so many ways. But I can't really trust him to be on the field. He's missed like 6 or more games each of the last 2 or 3 seasons. So I can't really rely on Will Fuller to be there. Who else is going to be able to support DeAndre Hopkins? Because even though he can have such a great season, he can't do it all. Their offensive line was the absolute worst in the game last year. It was absolutely atrocious. The question is whether or not they're going to get any better. My doubts are still there. Defensive line, J.J. Watt, amazing. 16 sacks last year, absolutely fantastic. Jadeveon Clowney, we have a lot of concerns about whether if he's even going to be there because he hasn't signed this franchise tender. Is he going to be that impact guy? Is he going to be on the field? We don't know. There's still some good pieces there. And their secondary, they did lose Tyrann Mathieu, and I think that was kind of weird for me. And I don't really know. I think they're an okay secondary, in my opinion. There are some good players, but not over the top. In my opinion, with the Texans, I think they're a team that has a lot of great talent, a lot of guys that you're going to recognize if you're just a casual football fan. But as a whole, I don't really know if they're going to be the top of the tops. I think they can contend. I think they can do something here, but I'm not sold on this team at all. I still think they've got good pieces, but there are things like a lack of a second receiver, an offensive line that I'm still questioning about, and their secondary that I have a lot of doubts about going into this season.
I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. Kiki Cote is a guy that I believe could break out. If I had to nail down a breakout for this team, I think Kiki Cote could, in the slot position. All the attention is going to be on DeAndre Hopkins. Of course, you have to double team him. And then if Will Fuller is on the field, like you said, that's kind of a question mark. But he is a deep speed guy that takes the attention away from the safety. So I think you'll see Kiki with a lot of one-on-one matchups in that slot. And if he can stay on the field as well, Deshaun Watson will definitely look towards him on big plays, big third downs, stuff of that nature. When you're looking at the offensive line, that's been a big concern for the past couple of seasons, in my opinion. They were able to overcome it last year just because Deshaun Watson is such a beast, and just his ability to get outside the pocket and maneuver around pressure has been fantastic. But he's also a quarterback who holds onto the ball for a very long time. He looks for the big play more than anything else. Of course, when you have those receivers, you're thinking in the back of your mind, you want to get it down the field to them. When you look at the offensive line, it's not great. It's amongst the worst in the NFL. They did have a couple draft picks, like Titus Howard could potentially find his way in the starting lineup. They picked a veteran up, Matt Khalil, who's no good, but he's there for depth purposes. They just need improvement in this area. I don't really see it with the players that they have on their roster. I do believe they'll be one of the worst offensive lines in football, which has me believing that this offense, for as explosive as it can be at times, it may also face certain matchups throughout the season, like just in their own division. a team like Tennessee or a team like Jacksonville, two very quality defenses that could really give this offense issues if they're not able to block for Deshaun Watson. Then you talked about it. I mean, Lamar Miller's not a very consistent running back. They've not really had a very consistent rushing attack with Deshaun Watson. Dante Foreman, though, could be a breakout season for him. Of course, he was down with the Achilles last year. If he could find his way in the starting lineup, I do believe he's a more explosive runner. He kind of reminds me in that mold of like Garrett Blount or a Derrick Henry, where they're kind of really hard to take down when they get the steam going when they're running the football. They're bigger backs, not necessarily a pass catcher. You know, you saw some of his explosion, though, in the screen game a couple of times when he was a rookie. We'll see what he has at the running back position. Not much at the tight end position overall. Looking at the defense, they did lose a little bit of depth along the defensive line. I think Covington was a little lost that nobody's kind of talked about there along their defensive line. They had a couple of depth picks in the draft, but nothing special. DJ Reader's an underrated player. I've always kind of said he's a nice run stuffer. Of course, J.J. Watt. Linebacker-wise, Whitney Merciless, good player, but been inconsistent, always been injured as well. So this team just needs to stay on the field overall. Zach Cunningham, Benardrick McKinney are two solid inside linebackers. McKinney's one of the best in the league. Davian Clowney, again, is he going to hold out? Is he going to get traded? I've actually heard like some rumors. Is he going to get traded or is he going to come back? And then you brought it up, the secondary, man. Like, the secondary is a huge question mark, especially after losing the most talented player in their secondary in Tyrann Mathieu, who's now gone to Kansas City. They replace him with Deshaun Gibson, who's had good moments in his career with Jacksonville and Cleveland. Can he kind of get back to the way he played just 2 seasons ago, because he wasn't great last year for Jacksonville, part of the reason why they moved on from him. Looking for a big jump from Justin Reed at safety as well. If he can kind of build on that potential from his first season, then we're talking about potentially a secondary that gets a little bit better if he can just up that playmaking ability a little bit more. This is a defense that I think was a little bit overrated when it came to last season, because I brought it up earlier. I feel like the schedule was very easy, especially when you saw them play quarterbacks who could expose their secondary. They did. And especially later on in the season, even against like Nick Foles, they did not have an easy time. And then offensively, I feel like they'll just be inconsistent. Dylan, do you have a record for them? What's your record prediction right now?
My record prediction for the Texans is 9-7. I think this team is going to be bordering on average to maybe they can do something. Their first half schedule is ridiculously difficult. They play the Saints, Jaguars, Chargers, Panthers, Falcons, Chiefs, Colts, the first 8 weeks of the season. I don't think anybody wants to play all of those teams back to back to back. That's not easy. So if they come out of that with like a 5-3 record, I could see some huge potential with that. But I could see them losing a decent amount of these games. I don't, Saints are on Sunday or Monday Night Football. A couple of these other games are really difficult for them. So that's why I have them losing a couple of games to start off the year. Later on towards the year, they got an easier schedule. They'll still have to play the Colts and the Patriots, but they'll have some easier matchups like the Titans, not the Titans, but the Buccaneers, the Broncos, Raiders. Those are going to be easier games for the Texans. I just think that I look at the hype for them and I look at what people are trying to assess with this team, and I'm just not buying it. Right now, I have them at 9-7, which in my rankings is not in the playoffs for 2019.
Yeah, I have to agree. I actually have them 1 loss extra, so 8-8. I have them as a very average team in 2019. I've kind of brought up a few of the points. I don't really believe in the offensive line. I don't really believe in the secondary. I think it was a little bit overrated last year. And then when you look at the schedule, this is the toughest schedule. Dylan brought it up that they've faced in many seasons. Like, they play some very difficult teams. And really, it might not be that they're not talented enough to make the playoffs, because they can be talented enough. Of course, we saw them last season, and it's not too different of a football team from last season. But when you play in New Orleans week number 1, you play in LA against the Chargers week 3, you play the Panthers, Atlanta, in Kansas City, in Indianapolis, you play a lot of good football teams. The Colts again, the Patriots again, the Titans in Tennessee, which is never easy. So that's a lot of games where I'm like, I don't know if I can predict the Texans to really win these football games, especially the ones on the road. And then when it comes to the home field advantage for the Texans, it's never been one of the best, so I don't have a ton of confidence there. Now, if the Texans can find a little bit more creativity with what they do with Deshaun Watson offensively, in terms of utilizing his legs, which I want to see if they take that to the next level this season with Bill O'Brien and Tim Kelly, Romeo Crennel's already a good coordinator on the defensive side of the ball. If they can up their coaching a little bit, in that regard, I could see this team making the playoffs and maybe sneaking a couple of those games out. But overall, I have to say that they're an average football team this season because of their deficiencies, because of their schedule, and because this division is so difficult. So we both don't have them making the playoffs, which might be a little bit surprising. But honestly, I've been a little bit down on the Texans ever since the end of last season. So, all right. Well, Gronk, spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View if you haven't already. Comment below your thoughts, your prediction on the Houston Texans going into the 2019 season. Do you think we're right? Do you think they're kind of an average football team that has a chance for the playoffs but likely won't make it? Or do you think that Deshaun Watson is just too good? DeAndre Hopkins is too good, and J.J. Watt will carry this defense to the playoffs once again in 2019? Let us know in the comment section below. It's Mitch and Dilly. Peace out.
Peace.